Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. I hope you guys are all doing well and staying safe. So, as some of you guys may already know, I made an announcement the other day in my Discord server about how I'm posting a new video every 3 days if I can, but obviously I can't be 100% consistent because sometimes I might have to go somewhere, especially now during summer vacation. I'll be going places, so I may not always have time to upload a video, but I will try my best to push out more content for you guys, since you guys really enjoy my content, which I appreciate. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe because that would really mean a lot. By the way, if you are interested in joining my Discord server, click on the link down below and feel free to stop by and say hi. Now, in this video today, I'll be teaching you guys another stock market terminology called the EPS, also known as the earnings per share ratio. This formula helps investors quickly assess how much money a company is earning relative to its stock price. It also gives them a way to determine how expensive the stock price is and how much profit is being made per share. So basically the EPS formula is earnings divided by the outstanding shares. Now let's say a company made $100 million and they have 2.5 million outstanding shares. So let's use our calculator and see what that will give us. So 100 million in earnings and 2.5 million in outstanding shares, and if we calculate that, we get 40. And for now, we'll just leave this blank. I'll explain what it is later in the video. So as you can see, 100 million divided by 2.5 million will give us 40. So this is telling us that we are earning $40 per share that we have, which is why the EPS is called earnings per share, because it represents how much money we're earning for each share of stock that we have in that particular company. Hopefully now that made sense and you guys have a better understanding of the concept. So let's dive right into the video and build this calculator. Okay guys, so now I just jumped into Visual Studio Code, and the first thing I want to do is generate my basic HTML structure called the boilerplate code by hitting exclamation mark and then hitting enter or tab, which pulls up all this for us. And in here we'll just want to create a div and give it an ID of container and an h1. This h1 is optional. I'm just creating it for the thumbnail of the video. Once we're done doing that, let's create a label and give it an ID of label 1, and we'll just have an input in here called ID will be earnings. So this is where we'll type in our earnings value, and the placeholder of it will be earnings in dollars. And then we can create another label underneath that label, and we'll just create another input inside of this, give it a type of number since we're dealing with numbers here, and then we can do amount of shares for the ID. Placeholder will just say outstanding shares, and let's go underneath that label and create one last label. Within that we'll create another input, and this is for our preferred dividend, and we'll give a placeholder of preferred dividend. Alright, once we're done creating all of these labels, our last HTML element we'll need is a button. So make sure that you're still inside of the container and create a button. I'll just give it an ID of button. You can name it whatever you like, and I'll just call it calculate. So if we go back and take a look at what we have everything we need for our HTML, so that's great. Let's go back to VS Code and create these two script tags, and I'll just do var button to bring in the button, and then we'll give it an onClick event. So it will fire this arrow function whenever we click the button, and we'll just create a variable called earnings, and let's create another one called amount of shares, and bring in our last input, which is the preferred dividend, which I'll just shorten to P dividend. Awesome, now we can start writing the formulas for these variables. So the first formula for calculating the EPS is this right here. So it's going to be earnings divided by amount of shares. So however much money the company is earning, we're going to divide that by the amount of shares that they have outstanding. And the second formula is going to have the P dividend involved in it. It's going to be earnings minus P dividend, because at first the value of the earnings is the raw revenue of the company. We want to extract out the P dividend that the company offered us so that we can get the actual earnings, if that makes sense. If not, you can comment down below and I'll elaborate on that explanation even more. And we can just divide all of that by amount of shares. So let's recap what I just did there. So I created these two variables. The first one is earnings divided by the amount of shares outstanding. And for the second formula, EPS2, we did parentheses earnings minus P dividend parentheses. So it's our calculator is going to calculate this section first, and then whatever value we get from that, we're going to divide by the amount of shares. So let's do if p dividend equals an empty string, meaning that the user didn't type in anything, then we're going to use the first formula, which is this right here. So we're going to alert to the user using template literal strings, which will allow us to use variables, parameters, or any of that inside these quotes. We'll just say earnings per share is colon, and then this syntax right here, which will allow us to bring in our variable. So I'll just copy this, paste it in just to show you that it works. And let's do an else statement. So if this isn't true, then it's going to automatically run this. So we're going to do alert, use template literal strings again. And since this is literally the exact same thing as the first one, except we're changing the number 1 to 2, we'll just copy and paste that in there, like so. And I believe that is all we need for our JavaScript, so let's go test it out. So we're going to use the same example that we had earlier in the video. So it's going to be 100 million divided by 2.5 million. We should get 40, and as you can see, we do, so everything's working. Awesome. Now let's go style it up a little bit to make it cleaner. So let's just do body background 59 6 E79, which is going to be this gray color. Obviously, you can go find an HTML color picker and just pick out your own color. So that's optional as well. And now let's style our container. We'll just do background white, so that shows up well. It contrasts well on that grayish blue background. We'll give it a height of 500 pixels, width of 700 pixels, display of flex, justify content, center. So whenever in CSS you're typing this line of code right here that says display flex, whenever you're typing that, that means you're using flexbox. So right now we're using flexbox to center all of our items, which is why we did justify content center. And there's another one called align items. We'll just do center as well. And let's do flex direction column. So flex direction column is just going to stack all of our elements that are within our container in a vertical stack. So it's going to be stacked on top of each other. Stacked on top of each other. And after that we can do position absolute. So now we're going to modify the position of the container. We'll just do top 45%, left 50%, transform, translate, negative 50%, negative 50%. Now we'll do border radius 10 pixels, cursor pointer, padding bottom, and we'll just set that to 30 pixels. Okay, once we're done doing that, let's get our inputs, all of our inputs, and we'll do background RGB 248, 247, 247, which will just make it show up on this white background, because if we were to set this to white, so let's try doing that, we will not be able to see it if it weren't for these borders. So let's also get rid of this border just to demonstrate my purpose, just to prove my point. So if we did border none, all you can see now are these two arrows and the placeholder. But if we didn't have the placeholder either, or this toggle thing right here, we wouldn't be able to see the input at all. It's going to be invisible to our eyes, which is why we have to give it a background of this right here. And we'll do outline none, so that whenever we click on it, the border doesn't appear around it. And we'll do border 1 pixel solid light slate gray. Height will be 40 pixels. Font size will be 30 pixels. Text align will be center, so it's going to center all of our text that we type into it. In this case, it's not text, it's going to be numbers. And let's do margin top 30 pixels, which will give us some space from each other. And there we go, we have this gap right here in between each of them. Alright, now we can get our label and do display flex, justify content center. Align items will be center as well. Awesome. Now let's grab our button and we'll just give it a width of 70%. Height will be 55 pixels. Border radius will be 50 pixels. Border will be none. Background RGB 41, 41, 41, which is going to be this dark gray color. It's almost the same color as CCC, and we can do font size 1 rem, and we'll do color white, letter spacing 1.5 pixels. So now our button is being spaced out by 1.5 pixels. If I were to do, let's say 4, something significantly large, you'll notice that the letters are being spaced out a lot farther from each other than before. But we don't want that, so let's go back to 1.5. And now we can do cursor pointer, position relative, top 50 pixels, transition 0.3s, and we have our button in place. Awesome. Now let's give it a hover property, and we'll just do font size 1.05 rem. So now let's try hovering over it and see what happens. As you can see, the font size increases a little bit, I can zoom in just to make it easier for you guys to see. So as you can see, the font size is increasing, and if I didn't use transition 0.3s, it's not going to be as smooth as when we include it. So that's why we have to include it, so that the hover property is nice and smooth all the way through instead of just happening instantaneously in under a second. And now let's give our label a font family of sans serif. Our H1 will have a font family of Poppins sans serif. And we can now style our label 1, give it a position of relative, right 44 pixels, and let's get the input with the ID of earnings, and we'll just give it a position of relative as well, but instead of right 44 pixels, this is going to be left 44 pixels. Now if we go take a look at it, there we go, we have everything in place. And our last thing we'll need is to style our placeholder of our inputs. We'll just do font size 23 pixels, which will shrink it down a little bit. And that is all there is to this project. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. If you have any comments or anything, feel free to post them down in the comment section below, and I will get to you as soon as possible. Once again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. I'll see you all in my next video, and have a good day.